At the beginning of the story, the main characters make love. Between them, there is a very strong passion and attraction. They sin, but at the same time, enjoy it. The man kisses the girl's ears, while the girl closed her eyes and moaned. The guy was all tied up but was holding the girl's hands with one hand. He addresses her as Mistress Anance and tells her to open her eyes. The girl has tears in her eyes, but the guy tells her that she allowed it. At this point, he kisses the girl's back, but the girl starts to say it's okay, and like she was going to say she's sorry, but stopped halfway through the word. The girl thought about what people would say about her if they saw her like that. She said she didn't want it, and what's happening now is forced. The man turned the girl to face him and told her that, as he had not said before, a master never apologizes to his slaves. But the girl, as if with fear, looked at him. We see from the paintings that this man has one horn present, while the other is broken. He looks at the girl with red eyes, while with his hand he pulls back one chain. The girl says that if she hadn't lost her master status, she wouldn't have had to endure the humiliation of this slave. But then the girl sits on top of him, and with her hand she grabs the chains, while kissing the man. The girl started telling that all this tragedy started when she lost her memory. She says it all started by the Holy Empire of Pa. A woman saw one incredible fruit and was surprised to ask the seller where the fruit came from. He told the woman that this time the empire had conquered a glacial kingdom, so it was most likely booty from those lands. At this point, the woman with a displeased face asked if it was true. Saying that then surely Anance had brought a whole bunch of slaves again, the seller answered her also, with a not very good expression, that she had indeed brought a great many slaves. The seller said angrily that he didn't know why the underworld wouldn't send someone to take her away. Apparently, her subjects aren't very happy with their mistress either, if they dared to say that about her. The woman told the man to be quiet and, approaching him, whispered to him that it so happens that their mistress is a female devil. She said that the girl had been slaughtered by one of her own slaves. The man said he heard that now she is knocking on the door to death and said it is karma. He says he hopes that after this she will change her outlook on life. But the woman hopes that maybe she will repent if she manages to stay alive. Well, the man, laughing, said that this woman, the devil, will never repent. They say that the chance that she will be reborn is increasing. In front of us appears wounded Anance, in the water covered in blood. She almost lost her life. The girl opened her eyes and was frightened, as she did not realize what was happening to her. She painfully asked herself where she was, and at that moment she realized that she didn't remember anything. She asked what was going on. She saw her blood and didn't understand where she was bleeding from and when she was shot. It turns out that the girl is much more scared when she realizes that it's not just that she's injured, but that she can't remember anything about who she is. This is her biggest fear at this point, and you can see in her face how scared she is. The girl did not even have time to recover well. When someone knocked on her door, it was her subjects and brought a man. The subjects told their mistress that they brought the criminal to her, as she had ordered earlier. They, treating him like an animal, ordered him to come here, calling him a miserable slave. Turns out this is the same man from the beginning of our story. The man, when he looked up and saw the girl alive, got very angry and asked how she could be alive. After these words, we realize that he is the one who wounded our heroine. When the subjects heard these words from him, they got angry and called him ungrateful, while ordering him to kneel down in front of his mistress. After all this was said, her servants said that they must now depart, calling her mistress, and quickly fled from the room, so quickly that the girl did not even have time to stop them and ask what was going on here and what criminal and slave they were referring to. She asked herself in her head who this man was and what he was doing here. At that moment, her slave asked why she called him here before she was fully healed, or did she want to brag that such a wound would never kill her? The girl did not understand anything, and with a bloody wound began to feel very badly, and she felt dizzy, and she wanted to ask what he meant, but stopped at half a word. Because of the pain, she could not say it to the end. The guy almost managed to tear the thick threads from his hands, and at the moment when he finally tore them, went straight to the girl and very much approached her. From his mood, we can understand that he wants to kill the girl. But the girl at that moment felt very badly and could not understand what was happening. Approaching the girl, he towered over her and grabbed the fragile girl with his big hands, frightening the girl very much, and told her that he thought she was ready for the consequences of calling the man who tried to kill her. He looked at her very angrily, and at that moment with his big hand began to press very hard on the girl's wound. She was in great pain and asked him to let her go. The man said angrily that this time he would kill her, calling her mistress. The girl had already tearfully begged and even pleaded with the man to let her go, as she was in unbearable pain. After being wounded mistress, as if she had become a different person, as she would never have humiliated herself before, much less a slave. A man with an evil look asked her if she was crying. The girl started crying and told him that she had no idea what she had done to him, but asked him very strongly to show her mercy. At that moment, the man's gaze changed, giving the impression that he didn't expect this from the girl. You can see a drop of mercy in his gaze, but still he doesn't show it. The girl in a panic starts telling him that she doesn't remember anything since she opened her eyes. She doesn't even remember who she is or where she is, and then a man appears in front of her and wants to kill her. The girl asks the man for mercy and swears to him that she will repay him this debt. But at that moment, hearing these words, the man began to laugh very hard. He did not believe in these words and could not stop laughing. He did not believe a word she said and told her that he did not expect anything less. He is puzzled, what he feels for her, and asks her how she does so he can't even hate her quietly, while he couldn't stop laughing. At this moment, the girl just keeps silent and doesn't understand what's happening to him. A man touches her and asks her if she was the one who swore that she would bring his head to the emperor. The girl was very frightened when she saw him touching her. He puts his arm around her and holds her head with one hand and tells her that he doesn't care what she says to him now, as he says he can't trust her anymore, and calls her mistress again. After he told her everything he wanted to say, he threw her in the water and held her with both hands so that she drowned, while he began to strangle her so that she suffocated. At the moment he strangled her, he called her Mrs. Anansi, asked her who he was to her. At that moment he remembered the time he stabbed her. After he stabbed her, he called her Mrs. Anansi, asked her if she was okay. He was sitting next to her on his knees, and then the girl asked him, "What happened? She says it's her stab wounds, but to her it looks like the man is in more pain than she is right now, and the guy looked like he wanted to cry." The girl with the knife wound, smiling a little, asks him if he knows that the touch of his lips on hers was her only comfort, and tells him she's sorry for breaking him. Anance calls him Solteo and strokes his cheek with one hand. We can see from the man's eyes that he is very much lost. We can understand that they loved each other very much in the past, but fate happened to separate them. After a brief pause, Solteo tells the girl, "Don't make him laugh." He starts to tell the girl that she can't tell him that now, and at that moment the subjects of the mistress come running and seize him, putting his head on the ground. But in the man's eyes, you can see tears and anger. In her last moments of consciousness, the girl smilingly told Solteo, "Never forgive her," and tells him that this is her last punishment for him. I wonder what happened to them to get to this point. Solteo comes back out of his thoughts, with disappointment and with pain and tears in his eyes, and asks her how dare she forget who he is. After all she told him then, the girl was already panting and didn't understand what was happening, and at the same time she couldn't hear him because she was in the water. She saw tears in his eyes and wondered if they were really his tears. But the last thing she managed to do was to touch his face with her hand and wipe his tears away. The girl had already lost consciousness, and her body was floating in the water. It was then that he let her go and thought she was dead. He looked at her with tears in his eyes and couldn't believe it, and called her name. After a few seconds, he took the girl's body in his arms and started laughing. But it wasn't laughter. It was his defensive reaction to hide his pain. He told her that there was no way this could be real. He started crying very hard and kept saying her name. The guy standing in the water holding the girl in his arms and screaming asked how much more suffering this girl must cause him. The girl was unconscious, but in her subconscious mind she asked herself what had just happened. She asked herself if she was really dead. She couldn't understand why all this had happened to her and why this man had strangled her. She asked herself what was going on, while telling herself that there was no way she could die without finding out. She said she didn't want to die, because she still had to figure out her life. The girl finally opens her eyes and is back in that room. She tells herself that she is back in that place again. Her wound is bleeding very badly. She is in a lot of pain. There was another knock on the door, and a voice was heard behind it, asking the mistress if they could come in. At that moment, the girl was very frightened because she did not want it to happen again. She jumped out of the water and remembered everything that had happened since she'd woken up the last time. She remembered how the man had been brought in, how he'd told her she shouldn't have acted so rashly. She remembered and how he began to strangle her, and how he cried over her, asking her how dare she forget him. And at that moment, those men who are her subjects are sitting outside the door again. They tell the girl that they're coming in, and the girl at that moment thought that she had to get out of there before they came in, and this man wouldn't kill her again. But the girl didn't have time, and she saw the man in front of her again. Facing him, the girl wanted to run away but realized her body wasn't moving. She told herself that if she stayed here, he would kill her again. At the moment when she wanted to run away, he turned around after her, at which time her subjects shouted her name. But the man still managed to break the ropes again and run after her, while her subjects ran after the man, shouting for him to be captured. The girl still managed to escape, but on the way she was seen by a man and a woman, and they were surprised to see the girl in such a state, and a road of blood was forming behind the girl. The girl, clinging to her wound, told herself that this was not a dream, and that the man had definitely killed her, but she still couldn't understand how she was resurrected and why she was back in this place. On the way she was seen by a guy and asked himself if it is Mrs. Anance. Our heroine was walking with difficulty and thought about the fact that her bleeding does not stop, and asked herself where she can go like this. While the girl was still thinking where to go, she met a man who called her the mistress of the Anance, and told her that he had heard that the girl had one foot in the grave, and said that as he saw it he thought the rumors were true, and at the same moment he took the knife out of the basket. The girl was very scared, but the man told her that she was a demon, and that people like her should die, because they really deserve to die. He wanted to grab the girl, but the girl could not understand how it could happen to her again. When the girl tried to run away, this guy tried to stab her, but at that moment Solteo jumped out of the corner and told the girl to run. Apparently he didn't want to kill her, but on the contrary, he wanted to save her, because from his look you can see that he was very much afraid when he saw that someone wanted to kill her. And at that moment, a guy jumped out of nowhere and killed the man who tried to harm Mistress. At that moment, the girl did not even realize what had happened and remained in shock. Her subject told her mistress that he could not even think that these worthless slaves dared to threaten their mistress, and telling his mistress Anansa that it was all due to his carelessness, he fell on his knees and begged the girl's forgiveness. He tells his mistress that, as she always says, he wants to pay for his uselessness with his life. But on Earth, we can see the man who wanted to kill the girl already lying dead. A subject of the girl asks for her, and having said her name, saw her faint. Then he quickly ran to her to save her, for he is truly a subject of his mistress and wishes her no harm. The girl went into her subconscious again and asked herself if she really died this time, or if she would come back to life again. At this point, she thought she would wake up in her bathtub again, just as she had after passing out in the same way earlier. The girl in her dream saw herself, who smiles and asks her, what is it happening to her? For before she was desperate for death, and now she wants to hold on to life so tightly. The girl woke up in a cold sweat and wondered if it was a dream. And then looking around, she realized that she was back in real life, and that she was okay. The girl looked at herself and noticed that her clothes and bandages had been changed, and thought that someone had brought her to her room while she was unconscious. But then she realized that she was really alive. Then the girl asked herself if in the dream the woman she just saw was really her. She thinks the girl in the dream looked like she didn't want to live anymore, but she can't understand why. She went to the mirror, and looking into it, she asked herself what kind of person she was. On her face, you could see a lot of doubts, and that she had a lot of questions that she could not find the answer to. Suddenly, the girl noticed that she has a tattoo a little below the chest, and this tattoo in the form of infinity. Definitely it means something important, but the girl has no way to know about it now. Suddenly a voice was heard outside the door, asking Mrs. Anance if she was already awake. But the girl was very much frightened and told to wait, and by no means to enter yet. When the girl was about to go somewhere, she hit the locker and fell to the floor, and with it a magazine. But at first glance, the girl did not even betray any significance to it, because she did not even notice it. Outside the door again, I hear someone waiting for Mrs. Anance. Apparently the girl had been hit pretty hard, and that's when she noticed the diary. She noticed it was written on it, and looking under the chair, she realized it was hidden. She started to read what was in the diary, and it said that she was an Anansi, the master of the greatest slave trading clan in the empire, the Rugba trading clan. After reading all this, the girl was very scared. The girl angrily threw the diary and said that it cannot be, and ran to the balcony. She cannot believe that she is capable of such a thing, and apparently she does not want to continue this case. Outside the door again, a subject is heard telling his mistress that he has come with a report. He says that a new elite slave has just arrived at the estate, but apparently the girl doesn't care about that. She looks out from the balcony and sees one very handsome guy sitting on his knees, all tied up with ropes. The girl looks at all this with disappointment and cannot believe that she is the mistress of a slave trading clan. The Rugba trading clan are the greatest slave traders of the Holy Empire. When the emperor conquers neighboring lands, the Rugba traders capture as many refugees and prisoners of war as possible. It turns out that from these captives are selected only elite slaves. From them, people of noble houses or mystical creatures, gradually forgotten stories, for example. It could be dragons or even vampires. That same day, a new prisoner was brought to them. He was guarded by 2 guards. While the man knelt with a bandage over his mouth, one of the guards asked how he even dared to stare at their mistress. All this is happening because a guy tried to look at their mistress, so they blindfolded him so it wouldn't happen again. One of the guys who saw what was happening started shouting for the guards to release His Majesty immediately. The guy looked furious at the way they were treating him. But suddenly, the retribution for his words caught up with him very quickly. He tried to ask how dare they raise their hands on the prince of the Glacier Kingdom. But the boys immediately stabbed him from behind with the big spear. The prince tried to say something, but he was unable to do so because of the bandage that tightly bound his mouth. One of Anance's subjects, asking the prince not to make him laugh, for here they are all mere slaves who belong to his mistress. He has in his hand the very spear with which the lad was pierced. The prince is pushed to make it look like he's bowing, but the guy is a very strong-willed man and stands back up and raises his head to the sky. Anance watches and is horrified as she sees her people killing other people and treats it as if it is nothing. Looking at everything that is happening, the girl thinks that she cannot believe that she is the owner of such a terrible place. She also wondered what she should do, because she needs to recover her memory. Otherwise, everything can be sad. It suddenly occurs to her that maybe her diary can help her recover her memory, because her diary may have answers to her questions. She opens her diary and begins to read it. It turns out that most slaves are categorized and sold without her involvement. But the elite slaves must be refined by her own hands. Because something terrible could happen if these slave girls go through this process. Suddenly, someone bursts into the girl's room and drops the water containers from her hands. The protagonist immediately puts aside her diary and asks her maid if she is all right. It is obvious that the girl is very worried about her subjects. The girl who dropped the container of water immediately kneels down and starts begging for forgiveness from her mistress. The girl tries to justify herself. She says that she was in a hurry and her foot got caught on something. Mistress is horrified that this girl is literally begging her for mercy, but pretends not to pay attention to it and just asks the girl if she is hurt. The maid raises her head to look at her mistress and informs her that she is perfectly fine. The girl also thanks her mistress for being so merciful, and she is incredibly frightened that the Anance has touched her. The protagonist emphasizes that she is pleased to hear this, but she also thinks that she doesn't want anyone else to get hurt or killed, at least not until she learns more about who she is. Suddenly, the chamberlain comes to the mistress. He apologizes for his intrusion into the personal space of the protagonist, but specifies that he would like to ask something. The lad takes a step into his mistress's room. As he suddenly steps into a puddle which has been spilled by the maid, he looks meaningly at the girl and calls her name. The maid is horrified by this, but the chamberlain keeps pressing her. He emphasizes that the least a girl can do is to be useful to her mistress. After he has said all this, the guy asks the maid, "So what does all this mean?" Mistress immediately stands up for her maid. She tells the chamberlain that this child was just trying to help her and also asks what he wants. The chamberlain bows to the mistress while laying his hand on his heart, and offering his deepest apologies to Mistress Anans. He says he just wanted to ask her where they should place Solteo. The girl began to wonder a bit if Solteo is the person who tried to kill her point. She asks herself what she should say now, in order to not let them know that she doesn't remember anything. Our heroine turns to Finn and tells her that she can go now, while the girl bows before her mistress and gradually withdraws from her room. The girl says that regarding Solteo, they can send him back to where he originally was. The girl means they can send him home, but not everything is as it seems at first glance, for her servant thought she wanted to keep the feisty slave as close to her as possible. Mistress's servant said that her Anant's mistress is really worthy of respect. She also said that it was certainly worthwhile to give this slave a rest next to his mistress. But hearing these words, the girl's face changed, and she asked herself whether she had just given the order to put the man who had tried to kill her in the next room. The girl couldn't understand how she could be such a stupid, and she began to think about what she should do to prevent this incident from happening to her again. Her servant asked the mistress if perhaps the mistress still felt indisposed, for it seemed to him that if she did not, why the girl refused to meet his gaze. At this point, the girl distanced herself a little from her servant and told herself in her head that she had to keep herself in checkpoint. She thought that there were more than just a few people after her life, and so first of all, she needed to be decisive in this matter. Our heroine grabbed her subject by the necklace and told him with a baleful look not to cross the line if he didn't want to lose his head. And at that moment, the girl thought she should bare her fangs before she was attacked. Instead of being frightened, Commerger, smiling, said that this was a very rude treatment. In his opinion, this is what a real Mistress Anance should be. He seemed to glow with joy and told the girl that he was very much worried because she was behaving strangely. Well, now he feels a great relief. And at that moment, the girl was standing behind him, and she didn't understand what her date was so excited about. Some sound is heard outside, and at first the girl didn't realize what was going on there. But the chamberlain told the girl that a slave from the Glacier Kingdom seems to have arrived. He says that this arrogant slave still considers himself a prince, and it seems to him that perhaps Pineapple could publicly punish the whole body in order to instill fear in the heart of this new slave. But the girl immediately refused. The comer smilingly said he believed the girl would put them both in their place by breaking them completely, and was waiting for the girl's confirmation. The new slave from the Glacier Kingdom had already been brought to Mistress Anance. The girl stood and watched as he wanted to break free from the hands of the guards, with the prince saying that they were miserable cursed ones and telling them to let him go immediately. The prince, seeing the mistress, became very angry and began to shout at her, telling her that she was a vile henchman electo, and asked her how dare she do such a thing to him and his people, the guards and the servant girl. Seeing how he treated their mistress, tied the prince's mouth so that he could say nothing, but before they tied it all the way, he managed to say that they were miserable damned and ordered them to let him go. The chamberlain, smiling as if nothing was going on, told Anance that this guy was quite young and lively, and he that with this new slave would give her much amusement. Girl was lost and said she did not think she would have time, but her servant said that of course he understood that she had much work to do, and turning to her mistress, asked her if she was sure she could manage it. The chamberlain handed the girl one envelope and told the girl that he wasn't sure if the emperor would give her more time. He said they had received a message that if there was a delay in the delivery of the slaves this time, it would end badly for her. Apparently, the moment the girl saw the seal from the envelope, she remembered something about her past. She remembered how the emperor killed her father and how she sobbed, sitting next to him. The man who killed her father asked her if she now realizes that she'll be his next toy in his hands, if she'll disappoint him like her dear father did. The chamberlain realizes that this means only one thing, that Mrs. Anance will have to mold Skadi into a useful toy for His Majesty. The protagonist at this point reflects on everything that is happening. The Chamberlain noticed that something was wrong with his mistress and asked her if she was all right. He wondered if she was overworked, but she said she was fine and just felt a little dizzy. Anance wonders about the scene she saw, wondering if the scene is a memory from her past, but realizes that now that she knows the Emperor is involved, things have become much more complicated. She stands in front of the prince, who is still on his knees, and wonders what she should do in such a situation, while the prince looks at her meaningfully and does not understand what to expect next. Suddenly the man, asking the guards to leave them, they commanded him, and taking the prince with him, leaves the Anance mistress's room. The girl clutches her head, and her servant, who is behind her back, notices it. He asks Anance if he should call the healer again, but the lady says it is not necessary. The boy tries to say something else, but suddenly he notices a girl's diary lying not far from him. He asks his mistress what it is, and stretches out his hand to take the diary. The woman immediately reacted sharply to his intention to take the diary. She snatched it right out of her subject's hands and told him not to touch that diary. Clutching the journal close to her chest, Mistress thinks about the fact that she may have overreacted to the situation. But she also realizes that there is no way she can let him see what is inside. The guy interrupts the girl's train of thought. He tells her that he lives for the moments when she treats him roughly. According to him, he will never forget how her hand smacks his hand away. As far as we can understand, the guy is a masochist. He also says that he should leave then, and he also tells the lady to rest before he starts training Scooty. The girl in turn listens to her subject in surprise. She asks, should she have been relieved to find out that her subject is a pervert? The girl's face is obviously astonished at this turn of events. The girl begins to look at the diary again and thinks that she will have to believe what is written in the diary and be content with what she has. At this time, the guards will take Solteo into his old room. The boy wonders why Anance ordered to put him in his old room. He does not understand what the mistress is up to. After all, she is not the kind of person who will turn a blind eye to what he did to her. The guy remembers how the girl told him not to forgive himself, because according to her, it was her last punishment for him. He wonders, has something changed from that moment? The guy also thinks about the fact that Mistress looked very scared when she ran away, and yet he realizes that he's never seen her so scared of anything before. At the same time, Solteo meets the Chamberlain in the corridor. The guy starts to mock Solteo and says that he thinks that there is no need to increase the number of guards to watch him, while the guy does not miss the opportunity to call Solteo a worm. He also wonders if Solteo will be a good boy. Solteo ironically replies to the guy and asks him not to worry about himself, because according to him, if he attacks again, this time he will do it when there are no guards around. The now departing guy says that Solteo should get on with it then, before he's added to Emperor Electo's collection of taxidermy, his words again feeling like some kind of sneer. Mistress is reading her diary in her room. She hears footsteps and realizes that he has already returned. She is also surprised that it happened quite quickly, but she thinks that his return is not a good sign, because she still has very little information. And the diary pages from which she draws information, and which were devoted to training slaves, are torn out. Also, if she understood correctly, the annual black market convention she has held in the past is called Rugby Night. The girl also knows that at this year's event, she must present a first-class slave that will please the emperor, or else it could end very sadly for her, at which point she remembers the emperor's words that she will be his next toy. The girl thinks that she has no time to waste and leaves her room. She goes to Solteo and says that she wants to talk to him. Solteo is sitting on the balcony as if he is going to jump down, seeing that his mistress has come to see him. He tells her that he didn't expect her to honor him with her presence, but the guy doesn't forget to mention that he is a scoundrel. He also asks the hostess if tonight isn't the perfect night to die. It's not clear yet whether the guy is actually going to commit suicide. The action of the story moves to another place, apparently the imperial palace, and from behind the door to the emperor's room, a plea is heard for the emperor not to do this. Suddenly a man approaches the guards who guard the entrance to the emperor's room. He turns to the two guards and asks if the Chancellor is still entertaining His Majesty. The guy gets a positive answer to his question. He opens the door to the room where the Emperor is and sees the Emperor with a giant whip that is apparently stained with blood. The boy immediately kneels down and greets the Emperor. He tells him that he has received news of the Anansa. Apparently, the Emperor had been waiting for this moment, but is still a little surprised. The Emperor is about to leave, and at once the Chancellor seizes him by the legs and begs him to have mercy on him. But the Emperor is adamant, and clutching his whip even more tightly in his hand than before, he begins to beat the Chancellor. The man watches all of this, and hearing the screams of pain that the Chancellor lets out, he doesn't even dare to raise his head. After the Emperor has finished beating him, he heads towards his subject, the mad-looking Emperor covered in the blood of his Chancellor, and inquires of his subject how Ananse is now doing. The lad tells his Emperor that Ananse has regained consciousness and is recovering, and as he has been told, the girl will begin training slaves tomorrow. The Emperor is not very happy about this report from his subject. He says that the same story as before is being repeated again. He orders his subject to order more shadows to observe the protagonist and bring him a more detailed report. The guy obeys the will of his Emperor and says that everything will be as he wishes. The Emperor glances at the glass boxes in which his slaves are kept. All the people are screaming to be released, but the Emperor looks at them only thinking that he needs to make room for his new pet. At this time, the main character runs to the balcony where Solteo is sitting. She wants to save him, and as soon as she gets to the guy, she immediately hugs him and says that he can't do it. The guy is puzzled, looks at the girl in surprise. While she asks him what he is doing, she tells him that he was ordered to wait obediently in his room, but not to kill himself. The man looks at the girl and says that he has failed to kill her, and so his only mission will be to destroy the property which the lady is about to offer to the Emperor. The girl was surprised to hear these words, but remembered that she had previously, it seems, read about it in a book. She recalled that the book said that obedience required hours of training. It said that without a doubt Solteo was the most prized possession of all that she had raised. The girl thought that she must have worked most thoroughly with Solteo in the past. She thought that if she were to use this man, perhaps she could act like a rugby master. Ananse, with a serious look, told Solteo that if he really wants to repent for his actions, he should be more sincere, the way a well-bred slave should be. The guy looked at the girl as if he was asking himself a lot of questions, but still he took the girl's hand and agreed with her. The guy suddenly took Ananse in his arms, and approaching her as much as if he wanted to kiss her, told her he would do as she wished. The girl, scared, pushed the guy away from her and asked him what he was doing, but the guy wondered if it was a game they were playing today. He took hold of the girl's hand firmly and threw it on the floor, but apparently the girl was in too much pain, and at the same time did not realize what was going to happen next. Solteo started kissing the girl's leg, lifting it higher and higher, but also saying that he couldn't even think that she had entrusted her body to a slave who was trying to kill her. The guy was on top of the girl and looking her straight in the eyes, said that even a slave would have more dignity. But the girl blushed and looked at him with horror. Apparently she became uncomfortable, and she was afraid. Girl pushed a guy away, punched him in the face, and trying to get up off the floor, told the guy she'd had enough for the day. She said she knows she's in a tight spot, but also says she feels like she's losing her mind. The girl was just trying to leave when at the same moment Solteo grabbed her arm to stop her, but the girl yelled at him to let her go. He turned the girl around and threw her on the bed, while holding her with both hands, and sat on top of the girl. He started kissing her, but at that moment the girl, screaming, asked him what he was doing. He started stroking her hand and told the girl that he knows Anansi's body better than anyone else. He says that this girl is not the type to flinch at the mere touch of his lips. Angry grabbed the girl and with an expressive look asked her, "Who the hell is she?" He seemed very measured, but the girl began to tremble with fear. Ananse fearfully started to say something, but the guy interrupted her and shouting at her asked her who she was. He told the girl that if she was going to justify herself, now was the time to do it. But the girl sure told him what would happen if she didn't. She asked him if he wanted to say she wasn't Ananse. He held the girl, said that this estate was full of rare magical objects, and therefore he did not believe that she was really Ananse. But at that moment the girl put her hand on the lad's arm. She confidently looks him straight in the eye and tells him that she's really a nonce. She tells the guy that she just can't remember where she is and who everyone around her is, and that's it. But the guy looks at her puzzled. He asked her if she really didn't remember anything. Apparently he was in pain from those words, and he only remembered how he got to this palace. He stood in the street, on his knees, while a girl mocked him. Point, she said, that the last of the dragon race. From these words, we understand that Solteo is part of the dragon race. The girl says that maybe she should have let a few more dragons live, and grabs the guy's horn. At this point, the girl notices the guy's earring and asks him if this earring will seal all his power. She grabbed his earring, saying she was very interested in it. Apparently at that moment she hurt him because he was bleeding, and even on the girl's hand there was his blood. At this point, the guy had a pitiful look on his face, and he looked straight at her, as if begging her to let him go. The girl said that she wondered if he could find a backward word to destroy her. We go back to the Solteo's room, where he holds the girl in his arms, and tells her that if she doesn't remember anything, then he'll look forward to how many days she'll hold out when the truth is known. The guy got up from the bed and the girl followed him, and said that's why she wanted him to help her. Well, the guy didn't seem like he was going to help her at all, because he said that if she forgot, he was the one who wanted her dead the most. The girl started to panic and thought about the fact that this couldn't be happening. She really hoped that there must be some way to remember everything. And that's when she remembered the seal. The girl seemed to have a plan of action, for she sat on the bed watching the guy leave, asking him if his powers were sealed while waiting for him to confirm. The guy stopped and told the girl to go on point. She told him that if he would help her act a nonce, she would break the seal at the time she got her memory back. The guy stopped and listened to the girl while she told him that the one he was mad at was in the past, and told him to do the right thing and get revenge on her, then when she got her memories back. Solteo approached the Ananse again and told her that her insolence made him think she might really be a nonce. But grabbing the girl's hand, he asked her if she was sure she wouldn't regret it after she got her recollection back. He puts the girl's hand on his chest, tells her that she crushed the Dragonborn's dignity under her feet, and also tells her that she destroyed his kind. But from the look in the girl's eyes, it seems she's sorry she was such a creep. Solteo looks directly at the girl, and with one hand he pulls her head to him, and at the same time tells her that she rewarded him with that damn earring and took everything away from him. He asks the girl if she's sure she won't regret making him tell her what she did. The girl gives him a little distance, confidently saying that she won't regret it, but clarifies to him that until then, they're in the same boat together, and they cannot leave each other. The girl looked straight at him and waited for his consent, but the guy didn't like it a bit, but still agreed and told her that he would make a deal with her, but only this time. The girl seemed pleased to hear these words. Solteo asked Ananse if she remembered the backward word to break the seal, but the girl said she did not remember at all, and began to say that she had left a diary, so she might try to find out. But before the girl could even finish what she was about to say, the guy interrupted her and told her that apparently she had time to loiter and talk about trying, and how she treated the slaves. Solteo asked the girl if it would not strengthen her resolve to make a bargain with him, and in doing so, he called the girl Dear Mistress, and approaching her with chain in hand, told her that if she did not want to, she could leave, for he would not stop her. At this time, he hands the girl the chain, and she put it around his neck, and told him she wasn't going to leave, for she was the first to ask him for help. He kissed the girl's ear, and started whispering to her that first of all, she needed to stop talking like a half-wit, and under no circumstances should she talk long in front of people, much less ever apologize. The girl, a little panicked, asked him what it was, and wondered if it had anything to do with what he was doing to her now. The guy kissing the girl's body said she must learn how to handle slaves if she wants to become a nonce, and asked her if she could control a rampaging slave. The girl had tears in her eyes, and began to say that she meant the other, but the guy interrupted her again and told her to open her eyes while calling her mistress Anansi, and said that she should not be so worried because she let it. The guy was kissing the girl's back, and the girl started to say she was sorry. But then he turns the girl around to face him and tells her that he's said before that a mistress never apologizes to her slaves. After this whole scene, we realize that we are already back in the present, for this is where our whole story began. Solteo told the girl that now she should use the knowledge she had gained, and gave herself completely into the girl's hands. The girl sat on him and began to kiss him, but there were tears in her eyes, and in her own head she asked herself how long she should do this. The girl closed her eyes, but the guy looked at her during the kiss and realized that she didn't want it at all. He stopped. I pushed her, telling her that they would stop here for today, and told her not to forget that intensity is very important. After these actions, we realized that the guy really feels something for the girl, but the girl did not even understand why he stopped. He humorously asked the girl if she started to get aroused. The girl rebelled and said that, of course not, while getting out of bed, and telling the guy that whatever the case, they had already agreed. The girl leaving told him that she would come to him if there was any cause for concern, while telling him to be ready. The girl stormed out of Solteo's room angrily, slamming the door behind her. The guy only smiled sweetly, and taking the blanket from the bed, began to inhale her scent from the blanket. The guy holding the blanket in his hands, with a loving look, said that her character is as bad as ever. After all this, we can understand that the guy really loves this girl very much, and he did not want to hurt her at all. But apparently something happened. It was morning, and the girl sitting at the table was having breakfast, but she couldn't help thinking about what happened last night. The girl thinks that last night, she couldn't close her eyes. The reason she couldn't sleep is because she kept thinking about that kiss. She says she knows she stormed back to her room, but she asks you what she was thinking about. The girl's cheeks were flushed and she had a sad look on her face. She thought she couldn't even believe she'd done this to the man who'd tried to kill her. But at this moment, her servant, telling her that the great chamberlain Moatia asked him to tell the lady that preparations for the public announcement of the punishment were in full swing. The guy tried to say something else, but the girl stopped him and asked him if he had anything else to say. She looked very sad, and you could see that she was not paying attention to what she had just been told. Her servant was a little worried, and told the girl that the great chamberlain said that the new slave would be very expensive. He also added that it was a rare slave that Emperor Electo would want to taxidermy. The girl didn't seem to understand the last word, so she asked the servant to explain it to her. The boy apologized and told the girl that, as she already knew His Majesty liked to add slaves, he liked to his collection of taxidermy. Hearing this, the girl dropped her fork and thought, how can he do this to living people, and what kind of person is he? She thought there must be a way to stop this crazy emperor. After that, the girl got up from the table and said that was the end of it, and thanked her subject for answering her questions, and you can see that the girl is in a hurry. The guy remained puzzled because he didn't even expect Lady Anansi to thank him, and he remained in a stupor, asking himself if it had really just happened. The girl hurried to the merchant and asked someone where Moesha was. The girls replied that the Grand Chamberlain was in his office, and he was with the guest of honor from the palace. But the girl did not even hear this information because she was in a great hurry. The girl burst into the Chamberlain's office and told him that she needed to speak to him urgently. The Chamberlain saw the girl very much pleased, but he was really with one man. He asked the girl if she had finished her breakfast, but the girl's eyes immediately catch that the Chamberlain has her journal in his hands. She rushed to him and snatched the book out of the Chamberlain's hands and asked him why the book was here when it should be in her room. Well, the fellow began to apologize. The girls say the maid found it on the floor and asked him what to do with it. He says he didn't have a chance to see what was inside. The Chamberlain began to say something else, but he was interrupted by that man and told the girl that he had seen that she had spoken at some length about how to govern this clan, as a loyal pet of His Majesty should. The girl looked at him angrily and asked him who he was. But the guy seems to know this girl pretty well and asked her how she can't know who he is. He asks her if she wants to say that the captain of the Imperial Knights isn't even worth bringing up. At that moment, the Chamberlain stood up for the girl, saying that of course not, and the lady seemed stunned by his sudden visit while calling him Captain Magnus, and asked the girl if it was true. The girl, holding her magazine in the chest area, looked at him with a penetrating gaze, and thought that she didn't even expect that the guest seemed to be someone from the imperial palace. At this point, the girl panicked and clenched her fist, asking herself what would happen to her if he found out that she had lost her memory point. The girl tried to calm herself down, telling herself that she should be calm. The girl bowed slightly, telling the guy that his words didn't sound like praise, but still she really always tries to live up to His Majesty's expectations. He turned around as if he did not care for the girl's words and told the girl that her words did not matter to him, and asks the girl to try to make sure that before night Rugba, everything went according to plan. He tells the girl that he does not at all wish to set foot twice in such a place as this. The chamberlain agreed and bowed to his guest. The girl smacked herself on the forehead and asked herself why everyone was making her life so difficult. The chamberlain told the girl that he should have handled such an insolent man himself without bothering the lady, and asked her what she wanted to talk to him about. The girl exhaled a comma heavily and began to tell him that, as he already knew, His Majesty liked to add slaves he liked to his collection of taxidermy. The girl wanted to continue, but suddenly she thought she wanted to ask, "Is there any way to prevent Solteo and Skadi from making an offering to the emperor?" But suddenly she thought that if Anance said it after so many years, it would arouse everyone's suspicion. The girl thought that in that case, the first thing she should do was to become a real rugby mistress, but she thought she would do it her own way, without sacrifice. The girl returned from her thoughts and reminded the chamberlain that he had said that he would publicly announce the punishment of Solteo. The lad replied that indeed so. He said that they should punish the slave who had dared to attempt the life of the mistress. The girl with an angry look tells the chamberlain to bring Solteo to her. The girl says she must speak to him before she passes judgment on him. Everyone's outside, and there's drumming, and Solteo and Scudi are on their knees, bowing. The chamberlain tells Solteo that he is an insignificant slave, and Anansa tells him that he is guilty of attempting to murder his master, and so he has already had his punishment devised. The girl says that henceforth the criminal will participate in the training of the slave Scudi, and thus survive the slave's miserable existence. After the girl announced her order, Scotty, with his mouth tied, resisted the order, but the girl ordered to take them to the cell immediately. The lady's subjects were talking behind their backs that it was quite a terrible punishment for a proud dragon. One of them said that, "And for this prince also a terrible punishment," and asked what would happen if he tried to commit suicide. The girl saw Solteo gather his hand into a fist, but did not really betray it. For at the same moment, the chamberlain admiringly said to the girl that even if she did not touch the goods, still crushed their tender souls. He says that it is I expected from Mrs. Anansi. He says that she is really terrific. Their conversation was interrupted the moment Scudi kicked down one guard, released his mouth, told everyone that they were indeed vermin, and asked them what they were trying to do to him. At that moment, he was stopped by Solteo, who grabbed the guy by the throat and started choking him. Ask him if he hasn't realized yet who the real parasite is. Apparently, Solteo was aware of the whole Anance plan. Solteo knocked the guy down, and he fell to the ground. At the moment when Solteo wanted to crush the guy's head with his foot, the girl ordered that enough of this buffoonery, and that he would continue in the cell, while ordering him to be taken away. But before the Scudi was lifted from the ground, he managed to grab a rock with him before anyone saw it. The guards listened to the mistress's orders and took the Scudi to a room. Already in the room, Scudi sat on his lap and listened to the conversation between Ananse and Solteo, while the girl indignantly asked Solteo what just happened. Solteo told the girl that back then he was just teaching this slave his place. He says he was teaching him the same way he was taught his place. But the girl indignantly told the guy that he would be in trouble too if something happened to Scudi. Scudi watched their conversation and was puzzled as to what they were up to. For at this point, Anansa told Solteo that he knows what she really wants. The girl says that all she wants is for this situation to be resolved as quickly as possible. Scudi didn't understand what was going on between Anance and Solteo. He asked himself what the hell was going on here. He didn't think it was like they had a standard master-slave relationship. Solteo looked at the guy and said that he remembered everything perfectly, and he also remembered why he was here, while he opened the guy's mouth and held him with his hands. Solteo, holding the guy with one hand and his mouth with the other, told the girl that he would help her carry out her plan, so she should do what she learned from him last night. At which point the guy smilingly said that he doesn't know what she's going to do, but orders her to do it soon, for he says he'll never let her head go to her feet, and even if she wipes all the skin off his bones. Solteo called the girl Mistress Anance, tells her to proceed already, for she knows that here in the estate, many eyes are watching her, and at that moment the girl orders him to take off. Scooty didn't know what she was talking about, but the girl told Solteo to take off all the guy's clothes. When Scooty heard that, he started laughing really loud at what he heard. After a good laugh, Scooty asks Solteo if he is really a dragonborn. He tells Solteo that he knows about being a slave, but asks him how he discarded his dignity as well. Holding the stone in Scotty's hand, told the lad that he could not believe he was bowing down to a woman like Anance, for she was not worthy of it. He began to cut the rope from his hands, while asking Anance if his family and his people are destroyed just to be treated like this. He walks up to the girl and says that if it's really true, she should keep undressing him, because he will take her until she cries and begs him to stop, and says that it's her dirty body that will be at his mercy. While Solteo freed the guy's hands, holding the rope in his hands, the guy was telling the girl that he would rip her skin to shreds, just like those people who had suffered because of her and her emperor. The girl couldn't believe that Solteo, the only one she trusted at the moment, had done this to her. And releasing him, the girl yelled at the guy, not understanding why he did it. At this point, Solteo told Scooty to run away if he wants revenge so badly to get back what was stolen from him. But the girl didn't understand why he was doing it, and asked him why he was doing it after all and ordered him to close the doors immediately. Scooty just smiled and asked what kind of game it was, but Solteo asked him if indeed he was going to miss such an opportunity to leave in order to get revenge later. But Scooty, with a laugh, said that of course he was not going to miss such an opportunity, and running away said that he swore he would return to take revenge. At this point the girl tried to stop him, but she failed. Anance started yelling at the guy, telling him that he told him himself that she was being watched by many eyes and asking him for what he did it. But Solteo told the girl that he just let him go before he bit his master and told the girl not to worry about it. Scooty tried to run away, but on the way he thought about how he could get through the gate, at which point he thought that if he could just get through the gate, everything would be fine. And from afar he yelled at everyone to get out of the way. The guy didn't even expect it to be that easy for him to get out of this place. But just as he was about to run away, a woman with blonde hair started calling out to him. Turns out it was Scooty's sister. Solteo says that if she teaches the dog that it has no home, it can't go back. He says that it will have no choice but to crawl back to where it ran away from. After these words, we realized that Solteo was aware that Scooty's sister was also here, and he was sure that when he saw her, he would stop and crawl back. Anance panicked and started to ask Solteo, what will happen if he doesn't come back? She says that if things don't go according to plan, they will be punished by the emperor together. The guy says that even if Scooty is lucky enough to leave this estate, he'll never be able to leave the capital, because every last dark alley is in the emperor's hands. Solteo says that of course the girl after this will still not be able to avoid being reprimanded, while calling her Mrs. Anance. The girl seems to have heard this very frightened, for she could not even think how she would be punished, for since we remember, the emperor is a mad man. The guy approaches the water, but the girl is surprised and starts asking him, what is he doing? The guy answers the girl that he is going to relax and wait for the slave to get back on his own feet. He looks mesmerizingly at the girl, and you ask her if this is what she wanted, the moment she asked him to help her with this slave. He remembers the night the girl told him she needed time away from palace surveillance. She asked the guy to train a new slave with her. Solteo, sitting in the water, tells the girl that bringing him in to participate in the slave's training was a rather wise suggestion, and over his shoulder looks at her while smiling. He tells the girl that in his opinion, a leopard never changes its spots, even if it loses its memory. But from these words, the girl got angry because that's not what she wanted. The girl was apparently very surprised to see him on the doorstep of her room. Apparently the girl was very surprised to see him at her doorstep. The girl looked at him in surprise and she could only manage to say his name. He asked the girl if she wanted him to take a bath too, while waiting for her confirmation. But at the same time, he was heading towards the bathtub already. The girl can't really say anything because he's already in the bathtub, and he tells the girl that he took off all his clothes like she wanted, and asks her what to do now. He scoffs, and asks if he should ask the Dragonborn what he should do next. But Solteo, smiling, says that the mistress of the Anansa is the one who makes all the decisions in this place. Scooty keeps scoffing, and says that of course, because she is the infamous Mrs. Anans. He says she even brought his sister back when he did everything he could to help her escape. The girl, with pity, and at the same time with surprise, asked him if her sister had been captured again. You could see from her face that she was not very happy about the news. Scooty, smiling, asks the girl why she is so surprised. He asks her, did she really think he would never find out directly from her? The guy tells Anansa that she herself ordered her people to find his sister and bring her back no matter what, because as he says, the princess of the Ice Kingdom is a particularly valuable thing. On the girl's face you can see regret and sadness, hearing him say that even butchers who slaughter animals for a living wouldn't be as vicious as her. He asks the girl if she agrees with him, and tells her that she is a real devil woman. But the girl almost cried hearing all this, and apparently she didn't even know about these events. The girl couldn't stand those words, and started to run to leave the room. But at that moment, Solteo tried to stop her, but he failed, as the girl still left to calm down. A girl is leaning against the wall, starts crying, and suddenly Solteo comes up to her and asks her if she's okay. He tells the girl that she should pull herself together before anyone sees her like this. The girl turned back and cried and yelled at him. She said she knew it all, but the guy looked at her with pity. You could see on his face that he was in pain too, seeing the girl he loved suffer. Anans holds her head up and tells him that she's going to get herself together before anyone sees her like this. But she says she's just realizing more and more what a horrible person she was, and that this fact torments her more and more. The guy listened to her very carefully, and the girl asks him to give her some time to come to her senses. The guy at first looked at her angrily and clenched his hand into a fist, but then he relaxed his hand and told her in a quiet voice that he understood, but advised her not to take too long. Solteo, I left the girl alone with herself to pull herself together. The girl frowned and told herself to pull herself together. She says the moment she forgets she's an Anansa, she'll be destroyed. The girl remembered the moments when they tried to kill her, and then remembered how the Emperor had told her that she would be his new toy. At that moment, she thought that this was her chance to stay alive and make things right. The girl returned to the room and excelled in playing her part. Scotty, seeing the girl approaching, started to mock her, telling her that at last she had returned, for he thought she had grown a tail. After these words, he wanted to say something else, but the girl grabbed him by the throat and angrily asked him in what sense she had grown a tail. She said that this place belonged to her while calling him by name. The girl approached the guy's ear and touched her tongue to it, saying that she expected him to wag his tail after her plan. From these words and the girl's action, the guy blushed with anger, and apparently he wanted to say something to her, but the girl beat him to it and asked him what was happening to him, because he could not even move. After saying that to the girl, Scooty grabbed the girl by the hair and yelled at her to shut up, asking her what she was trying to pull. Saw the guy's actions, Solteo. Solteo tried to approach them, but the girl signaled him with her hand not to dare to approach them, and at that moment the guy stopped. The girl played her role perfectly, because she started laughing very loudly, and the guy was left speechless. She asked him if he heard what Solteo said earlier. She tells him that she decides everything here, and in doing so grabs his hand out of her hair and throws it into the water, while putting her foot on it and looking down on him. The guy blushed with anger and wanted to say something to her or to respond to her behavior with an action, but the girl told him that he should act like a dog and repeat after her. At the same time, the girl laughed and barked, making the guy even more angry and looking down on him. The guy, frightened by the girl's behavior, still barked back. The girl was surprised by this very much, and at that moment, she thought that he really barked, and asked herself what kind of feeling she now felt. Scooty pushed the girl away from him, and asked her if she was satisfied now. He yelled at the girl and said he wouldn't play anymore because in his opinion, it was just nonsense. The guy yelled at the girl and said that as soon as he regained the glacial kingdoms, he would hang every last one of them. But the girl continued to look down on him in a calm tone of voice, told him that then they should make a bet. The girl, touching her fingers to the guy's chest, mocking him, asked him if he would give you back your kingdom faster than she would train him, or vice versa, she would train him faster. The girl told the guy that he might have another chance to escape, while she yelled at him to answer her. She called him the former prince of the Icelands. Solteo, seeing the girl starting to get into the role too much, walked over to her and held her with one hand, telling her that enough of this training for today. As she left the room, the girl's expression changed, and she asked herself what that feeling was, for she felt as if she were possessed. At the same time, Solteo, on his way out, told Scooty that he shouldn't be upset about such a small thing as barking, because he said that by the time his training was over, he too would be begging his master for love. At this, he leaves the room with a smile, but Scooty got very angry and started yelling that they should stop talking and to get out of the room. But Solteo came out and told him, "Welcome to the life of a slave." The words made him even more furious, and he pounded his fist on the water, his eyes full of anger and resentment. Already in the other room, Solteo was sitting on his knees before Mrs. Kama, while she asked what kind of love he was talking about, for she read it as ridiculous. She told him in a gruff tone that she did not want to hear it at all from either of them. The girl, looking directly at him, said that she had just asked him to help her, to train this slave, but in no way had she asked to complicate the situation. The guy looked down at the floor and a little sadly told the girl that she had a good time there, but the girl told him that she never liked doing any of that. And right after the girl said those words, the guy came very close to the girl and we can see that her expression changed. They almost kissed, the girl showing that it was really good for her. But at this point, the guy stands up and clenches his hand into a fist and asks the girl if she has learned anything about his backsword. The girl tells him that she hasn't learned anything yet, but according to her, she will do her best to find him. At this point, the girl got angry with herself and called herself an idiot and asked herself why she closed her eyes, as if she wanted to kiss him. We can understand that the girl does not want to accept this fact at all. The guy went to the girl's mirror and told her that he didn't trust her enough to take her word for it, asking her if she'd even think of searching her own room. The girl saw him coming to her table, jumped out after him, and ordered him to stop doing that and not to search her room because it was her private space. Solteo started searching the girl's room and told her she could watch him do it if it made her feel better, and asked her if she was hiding something from him. Well, the girl still agreed, although she was very unhappy about it, and told him she wasn't hiding anything from him, and suggested he search together. They searched for a very long time, but still found nothing. And at one point, the girl slammed one of the cabinet doors, and a vase started falling from the cabinet, right on top of the girl. The girl didn't even notice the vase, and told the guy that unfortunately, there was nothing in this room that could serve as a clue for them. The guy saw the vase falling right on top of the girl, quickly ran up to her, and although he protected her, they fell together on the floor. They looked into each other's eyes just like lovers. The guy asked the girl if she was okay. The girl wanted to say something, but the guy interrupted her and said that she had closed her eyes earlier when they were facing each other. He smilingly looks at the girl and asks her what she expected from him, but the girl started to justify herself and tried to avoid answering his question. While they were talking, the girl noticed that a chest had fallen on the floor and asked the guy what it was. She thought it was a jewelry chest. The girl went to the box and tried to open it, but she couldn't, so she asked the guy why it was so hard to open it. The guy approached the girl and said that he could feel a faint magical aura around the box. He said that maybe the box was given to the girl by one of the famous magicians she used to know. The guy looked at the girl and asked her if she remembered anything, but the girl said she didn't remember anything. But then she noticed that under the box, and it was written, "For a boy whose name is unknown." The girl opened the box and there was a flower. Then the guy's eyes lit up, and he remembered something of his past. He remembered his childhood, and how he told a girl to take the flower if she was still worried. The boy told the girl that it was a good luck charm. Then the girl got very excited and couldn't believe that it was really for her. The boy told the girl that she used to say that this was her favorite flower, so he wants to give it to her. The boy says that this flower has brought him luck, so he hopes that good things will happen to her too. He asked the girl if she liked this flower. The girl smelled it and said that of course she liked it very much, while smiling very much, and told the boy that she would keep it forever. It turned out that the boy was Solteo, and the girl was Anans. The guy said that he had never forgotten that day and remembered the moment when he was brought on his knees to the girl. He was surprised to see her, and apparently he recognized her at once, but the girl angrily told him that it was the first time she had ever seen him in person, calling him the son of the dragon-born chief. Then the boy said very sadly that she had forgotten him then and now. Dear friends, and if you want to see further what happened between Ananse and Solteo, be sure to subscribe to the channel and don't forget to give this video a like. And when it gets 40,000 views or 5,000 likes, I will definitely make for you the second part.